Welcome to this edition of What Did I Miss? Where today I'm talking about Season 2 of the Umbrella Academy and going over all the Easter eggs, references, and conspiracy theories I could find. While the first season of the Umbrella Academy showed the team moving forward by coming together, the second season pulled them back apart and into the past, in a violent and explosive storyline that changed the face of the group as well as the present timeline. The kids from yesterday showed up in 1960s Dallas this time and were charged with once again stopping the world from being destroyed, which may or may not have been due to the shadowy dealings of their adoptive father. The popularity of the show has made the Umbrella Academy the most watched show on Netflix right now, and you may think that you have heard it all. But I heard a rumor that you watched this whole episode and told me in the comments if I missed anything. This is What Did I Miss?
That's more your specialty.
This is your official spoiler warning for this episode, as I will be going over the events that occurred during the second season, as well as referencing the first season and the comic book. Even if your name is not Agnes, you may have noticed a lot of birds this season. Before the release of Season 2, the show's official Instagram page revealed that there would be 43 sparrows hidden throughout the season. This was a clear indicator that the sparrow was somehow connected to the 43 special children all born at the same time in 1989, which we found out in the last scene of the season meant there's a new team of adopted powered children known as the Sparrow Academy. The Sparrow Academy is featured in the comics, but it remains to be seen if the show will mimic the team entirely. In this new timeline, Reginald Hargreaves has met everyone in the Umbrella Academy before he had adopted them, and so he has the foresight not to adopt them again and instead adopted 6 other children. Ben was not with the team in 1963, at least in corporeal form, so it makes sense that he was still adopted since Reginald Hargreaves probably only knew about him that he had died fighting with the team. As far as any other differences between the teams, besides that green floating box, the names of the teams may be a clue as to their purpose, as it seems that Reginald Hargreaves names things based on their usefulness to him. He even gave the children numbers to rank their obedience to him instead of using their names. As a team, he really treated them like they were umbrellas. He used them and deployed them when necessary, and discarded them without a thought when he didn't need them. A sparrow, however, is a bird that is said to be a loyal follower, incapable of independent thought, and one that feeds on insects and scraps. This may be exactly what Reginald wanted in his new team, a team of mindless followers that would not question his authority or want for anything else. Another coincidental reference to the birds may be the year 1963, where most of the season takes place in, which is the same year that The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock was released. There were a lot of references to other movies in this season, starting with the Avon movie theater marquee that is located outside of the alley where all of the Umbrella Academy lands in Dallas. When each team member lands, a different movie is listed that has something to do with their character. When Klaus and Ben arrive, the movie that is shown is Curse of the Undead, which is an obvious reference to Klaus's ability as well as Ben's stay in purgatory. When Allison arrives, the movie is playing is named The Curse of the Werewolf, which is a reference to her fixation on the moon that even her new husband recognizes. When Vanya lands, The Kiss of the Vampire is listed on the marquee, which I believe is foreshadowing her using her ability to save Harlan's life while also transferring her power to him. When 5 arrives, the war has already started, so I don't believe the theater would still be showing movies, and in fact, The Kiss of the Vampire is still listed there and it's all messed up. And I don't think we get to read the marquee when Luther and Diego arrive, so if anyone knows that, please let me know. Before Luther goes out for a morning run, we see a homeless man carrying a placard that reads, "The end is nigh." This is a reference to the Watchmen and the character Rorschach. There are some similarities between these two independent comics, such as the growing tension with Russia, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we see the man start walking one way and then Luther run the other way. It's almost as if the show is telling us that yes, there are similarities in these plots, but this show is going another way. Speaking of Luther and his morning run, his outfit and movements are a direct reference to Sylvester Stallone working on his steps in Rocky. When he slips, I immediately thought of Five's line about Diego being like Batman but thinking lower, In this case, I think Luther would be like Rocky, but thinking lower. When all the siblings fall out of the temporal portal, Diego is the only one to land on his feet. I have 2 theories about this, as well as the jump he pulled off in the crazy Season 2 opener. I think that him being able to land on his feet like a cat might actually be an extension or an evolution of his powers. If I understand them correctly, he can control the trajectory of an object he throws. So if he were to throw his own body, it would make sense that he can control that on a superpowered level. Or this is a way to highlight the fact that Diego sees himself as a great vigilante, so he must hit the superhero landing and he's got to do the superhero flip. The superhero landing has been parodied many times, most famously by Deadpool in his last movie. The flip reminds me of Roy Harper from Arrow, and he had the flip wherever he went, and it became a joke for the fans, and it was even referenced on the show. When New Old New 5 fights Old New Old 5, the former says that he can do this all day. This is a reference to Captain America fighting himself during Avengers Endgame. The X-Files are directly referenced when 5 states to Elliot that the truth is out there when he asks about aliens. You could also say that the smoking man is referenced in the design of one of the members of the Majestic 12, but that could also just be the use of the evil man in the black hat archetype. Also, when the future is changed, Vanya blows up the Federal Building, and the first X-Files movie starts with an incident at the Federal Building in Dallas, which also deals with an alien cover-up. Luther gets his heart broken after learning that Allison is now married, and he goes and eats his feelings with some delicious Texas barbecue. In the comics, Luther does gain a good amount of weight, and this was going to be in the show, but after the release of Endgame and the popularity of Fat Thor, the writers removed it from the show as to not be repetitive. But honestly, since the comic was written before the movie, the show had every right to leave it in. When Ben briefly possesses Klaus the first time, Klaus asks, "Did you just Patrick Swayze me?" This is a reference to the movie Ghost, which I have not seen, so I might as well say this scene references a scene in Family Guy that references the movie Ghost. The 3 eccentric blonde hitman chasing after the siblings go by the name the Swedes. These characters are not in the comics and are meant as a replacement for Cha-Cha and Hazel, who may be dead at this point. I will talk about that theory in a second. I believe that these characters are based, though, on Geir Grimsrud, who was a hitman that was known as the Swede in the movie Fargo and played by Peter Stormare. Speaking of Cha-Cha and Hazel, Hazel says a variation of the famous line from the time-bending saga The Terminator, "If you want to live, come with me." During the scene where the handler returns to the commission, we see an agent carrying Cha-Cha's mask, which may mean she is still somehow alive. I really love both Cha-Cha and Hazel, and I was sad that they were not part of this season, for the most part. The actor who played Hazel is named Cameron Britton, and if you want to see him in something else, I recommend watching a show on Netflix called Mindhunter. He plays a real-life serial killer in jail named Ed Kemper, and his performance carries the gravitas of Hannibal Lecter and the calm cool of Todd from Breaking Bad. The show itself is a bit uneven, in my opinion, but his performance is amazing. Cha-Cha was of course played by Mary J. Blige, who I really thought did an amazing job. Even though, and this is in no way a knock on her performance, but every time she was fighting, the song that was playing on the show got tuned out in my head, and all I heard was, "Let's get it thumping, now you're jumping and I'm pumping, dance for me, let's get it percolating while you're waiting, so just dance for me." During the end of the world battle in the first episode, Klaus activates his power to control the dead in a way very reminiscent of how Aragorn commanded the souls of the dead in the last Lord of the Rings movie. When Vanya arrives in the past, she gets hit by a car and gets taken in by that same family. This is very reminiscent of how Back to the Future started when Marty McFly got hit by a car and then almost had sex with a teenage version of his mother. Speaking of mothers, when the handler is first seen back at the commission, the song Bippity Boppity Boop is playing. This is a twisted reference to the fairy godmother in Cinderella, who is kind of what the handler is to Lila in a very sadistic way. When the handler mentions jazz to Five in her speech to re-recruit him, she is singing Snake Jazz from Rick and Morty. When the siblings are all talking at the restaurant, Vanya says you can only talk while holding a conch shell. This is a reference to the 1954 book by William Golding, The Lord of the Flies. On more than one occasion, the handler calls Lila Little One. This is a reference to what Thanos would call Gamora in the Avengers universe. He also adopted Gamora after having her family killed. Vanya is reading James and the Giant Peach to Harlan. The story is about a boy who goes on an adventure with 7 magical bugs, possibly referencing Vanya and her 6 siblings. The hotel room number 217, where the handler meets Lila, is also an infamous room number within the Overlook Hotel, shown in the movie The Shining. Allison takes part in a sit-in at a whites-only diner. This is a recreation of the Greensboro sit-ins that occurred during the same time period in Greensboro, North Carolina. The restaurant that these took place in is now an international civil rights museum. While recreating the JFK assassination, several actual events and people are either depicted truthfully or with some artistic license. The Umbrella Man was a famous figure in the JFK investigation, as well as the Zapruder film, which was renamed the Frankel tape for the show. Jack Ruby was featured in the season and was the man convicted of shooting Lee Harvey Oswald. An interesting detail the show left in was Ruby's dog. At his trial, his defense argued that him shooting Oswald could not have been premeditated because he had his dog in the car and would not have left him like that. Majestic 12 are a big part of the season's plot, and this is a reference to a conspiracy theory of a group of elite individuals who have ties to secret U.S. government operations, such as the cover-up of aliens in Area 51. A man named Hillenkotter is mentioned as being part of the group, and there was a man with this last name as the head of the CIA. It would also make sense that Reginald Hargreaves would be involved with the shadowy agency interested in aliens, since, as it turns out, he is in fact an alien. He reveals this when he takes off his rubber mask and destroys the Majestic 12, which may be the event that triggers the new present timeline. He is also said to be concerned with the dark side of the moon. This is a reference to a conspiracy theory that the US and Russia entered into a space race to get to the moon first because there was evidence of alien life there. This was also referenced in a horrible movie about amazing toys. During a party at Reginald's mansion, we see a slight man with white hair who could be Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol was a famous soup enthusiast and artist. When Five attacks a vending machine, you can see a candy bar named Pogo Go-Go's with the slogan, "Take flight with Pogo Go-Go's." This might mean that Pogo was some sort of celebrity from his missions to space. There are a series of spider brooches that appear on the handler and start as small and towards the bottom of her ensemble, but throughout the season grow more prominent and higher on her dress. This depicts how she is winding a road back to the top by weaving a web of deceit. During the apocalypse, you can see a People-style magazine with Allison's family from the first season on the cover. When the handler stamps the kill order, you see a Gritty's Donuts receipt on the desk. Gritty's Donuts was a major set piece in the first season of the show. When Old Five is sent back in time, a fire extinguisher is thrown back through the portal that we saw Klaus through in the first season. Lila turns out to be another one of the 43 children born with powers. This is given away a couple of times before the big reveal. One is when she's fighting Five. I remember at least one time, maybe two, when he thought she was going to be somewhere and she definitely was not. I remember thinking at the time she's either a speedster or a mimic. Also, when her parents were shown to be killed, it flashed back to 1993, and she said she was 4 when they died, which would mean she was born in 1989, which is the same year all the Power children were also born. Speaking of 1989, even though all of the Umbrella Academy were born on the same day, due to them time traveling and arriving in different places in time, when they all return back to 2019, they are no longer the same age. Klaus probably takes advantage of his knowledge of the future more than anyone else, and he applies this knowledge by using song references as prophetic words. He references the songs Waterfall by TLC, I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor, and Everybody by the Backstreet Boys. He also names his cult Destiny's Children, which is a reference to the Beyoncé prequel Destiny's Child. Klaus is known for his tattoos, as his hands say hello and goodbye much like a Ouija board does. In this season, he sports a new tattoo over his belly that in Thai is translated to Klaus loves David. If this does not make you sad enough, I noticed that when Dave is on the bus, someone yells, "Move it, Marine." So not only did Dave enlist earlier than he did before, he joined the Marines instead of the Army, which means he will probably never get to serve with and fall in love with Klaus. In the elevator before meeting their father, Luther has a fart attack that seems to bother everyone but Diego. This is not an example of Diego displaying the power to breathe underwater like his comic counterpart codenamed the Kraken is able to do. In fact, David Castaneda, who plays Diego, admitted in the behind-the-scenes footage that he could not keep a straight face during this scene, so they just went with the best take that they could. During the final battle with Vanya, we see a white violin that is missing a bridge. Vanya's codename in the books is the White Violin, and the missing bridge may symbolize the fact that she has lost the bridge back to humanity, which is her faith in her siblings. Ellen Page plays Vanya, a character who has often been compared to Jean Grey from the X-Men. Ellen Page also played a member of the X-Men, Kitty Pryde, in the film X-Men: The Last Stand, which saw the Jean Grey character lose control of her immense powers. In that same movie, Jean Grey used her powers to lift water out of a reservoir, much like Vanya does to save Harlan. This is not at all an Easter egg, but I just want to say that I loved this soundtrack. The first season was already pretty good, but this season may be one of my most favorite soundtracks in recent memory, and each song seemed to go perfectly with each scene it was in. And this last one is kind of just an Easter egg for me, but every time somebody says Vanya, all I hear is Lucille Bluth from Arrested Development saying Anya. If you have not seen Arrested Development, you should watch it, especially the first season. If you have watched it, I hope I did not ruin this character for you. Even with some formulaic storytelling and a few less than dynamic characters, I really grew to like the Umbrella Academy, and I enjoyed the second season much more than I did the first. I think the show is at its best when it examines the relationships of this dysfunctional family and how their collective trauma affects one another. In the beginning of the series, we meet 7 people who are all scarred in different ways, but over time you find that they are all really dealing with the same problems. They're just handling them differently based on their own experiences. They all see themselves a certain way, which is the image of themselves they believe their father wanted them to be. But they learn that by leaning on their family now, they can evolve into their own personalities and become a hero within the group and in turn for the rest of the world. The addition of Lila, I think, is permanent. Since if she does not join the Umbrella Academy, they will already be down one person to the new Sparrow Academy. We saw her jump right out of the timeline like Loki did in Avengers Endgame, so I'm sure she will pop up again soon. With Reginald Hargreaves as the leader of the Sparrow Academy now, I would not be surprised if Lila somehow brings back the Handler to lead the Umbrella Academy. If the second season was all about self-actualizing, I think season 3 will be about coming together to fight something more powerful than any one of them alone. I really hope we eventually see the team evolve into the version we saw at the beginning of season 2, because that was awesome. But you tell me, what did I miss? If there's anything important you think I left out, please let me know. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?